let's begin our topic for today with skills. We've been talking about lately, we talked about your strengths, right? This week we talked about strengths and weaknesses for a customer service call center position. And we've been talking about the skills, your abilities, the things that you are good at. So, quick story that I wanted to share with you this evening. I remember that the first time that I applied for a call center position, I applied at the Alorica call center, and I did the normal thing, right? I made my CV in English, and it was this thick. I included, a bunch of photocopies, diplomas, different courses, even university courses, referral letters. I put a lot of stuff in there because traditionally, when I applied for other types of jobs, you go ahead, you show up with a big CV, and the person that interviews you just checks it. They check to verify um, if you got all your paperwork in order, right? So I would normally show up with a big CV. So I thought I was doing the same thing. I thought they were going to take a look at it very closely. So I remember that when I approached the front desk at the call center, I said, "Hey, I want to apply for a position. Here's my CV." And I remember that the lady that was there, I don't know if this ever happened to you, something similar like that. The lady there, she took my CV, she removed the clip, and she kind of removed like almost everything out of it, and she only left the first two pages, which were like my life sheets, just a quick summary, right? She just took the first two pages, and she said, "Could I have your ID, please?" I gave her my ID, took a photocopy of it, stapled it to my two pages, and she gave everything back to me, including my fancy folder and everything. And I was like, "What? You're not going to need all of these things?" "No. If we do, we'll let you know. For now, this is all we need, and go ahead and take a seat. We'll call you by your name." And that was the first thing that impressed me, that traditionally you show up with all of this big CV, right? But that it turns out that they didn't really care about all of the previous studies and my experience in the past. They didn't really care about that. Well, anyways, I went to sit at recruitment, and then this guy comes out and says, calls me out by my name, right? Says that called me out by my name. So I said, "Hey, come over here. Let's go to this office. Let's start the interview." Um, I remember that it was this kid. Well, I call him a kid because he was probably like probably 10 years younger than I was back then. Probably he was into his late 20s, 28, 29. I was in my early 30s. Perhaps I was like 30, 33, 32. But he was much younger than I was. And he starts talking to me. And one thing, that he said, that he wasn't using, he didn't have native speaker level English. He didn't. He was like probably a B2 plus, something like that. So, his English wasn't that impressive. It was just B2. But he was doing the interviews. He was doing the interview that afternoon. So he asked me a couple of questions. He did, tell me about yourself a little bit, and I told him about, that I had no experience in a call center, but I had a lot of experience working at schools that I used to, my parents, the parents that I had at the schools were like my customers and my students and whatnot. So I told him I saw it like that. And he said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And we just talked more about my background from Canada more than anything else. I remember it was all about that. It was just like 10 minutes. And then he said, "That's great. Thank you. Can you stay for a couple of computer tests? We're going to do a typing test and a listening test." And I said, "Yeah, sure. I got some time." So he took me to a computer room that they had there. They put on the software there, the computer logins. So I did a quick typing test. No big deal. Blah, 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 blah. That's it. And then he said, "Okay, put on this headset, listen to the audio, and put in the information." I think it was this audio about this customer with a shipping problem. So I had to type in the address, the telephone number, the description, and some comprehension, like the activities that we do, very similar to the activities that we do here. So it was, that wasn't difficult. And then he said, "Okay, great. Looks like everything's good with your test. The final thing here is, can you do a doping test?" which is a drug test. And never in my life I've never done any type of test like that, which is like they give you this little like container, right? This sample, and they go, okay, so here it is, and the washroom is over there. I'm going to go with you. And I immediately thought, what is this guy gonna watch me, go into the bathroom? But no, he waited outside. So, I took care of my business. I got the sample that they needed, gave it to the guy, and he said, okay, we're going to take this to the clinic right now. There's a clinic here on the site, and we'll give you a result like in 20 minutes. Could you take a seat, and we'll come back? I said, sure, no problem. Nothing was going to show up anyways. Just coffee, perhaps. Well, anyways, the guy comes back and he says, hey, Emerson, everything's good. We're good to go. So why don't you come over here? This is the job offer that we got for you. This is the salary that you're going to earn. These are your bonuses. These are the benefits. This is your schedule, which I remember my first schedule was Monday and Tuesdays off. So I was going to work on the weekend, but I said, I don't care about that. I want to get experienced. I didn't really care about, having everything perfect. I knew they were giving me my first experience, a job experience at this type of job. So I said, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and do that. So he said, okay, how does that look? Do you like that? Is it good for you? Yeah, I said, sure. So I had to sign. I signed, and that's it. That's how I got in. And then I started my training the very next week, and the rest is history. And that was my hiring process. It was like that for me. And then, 2 years later, when I was promoted to trainer, I was the one interviewing people and helping people with their hiring process and selection process. So it was like, it turned around, right? So, I was thankful. I actually, the thing that surprised me was that this kid who did the interview, he did not have perfect English. When I found out, he was the trainer supervisor when he did that interview. And when I got promoted 2 years later, he was the training manager. He was the training manager. And he also interviewed me for that second position. That was a whole different type of interview because I had an interview for a staff position. So the type of questions were different. Like, what is your leadership style? What are your experiences with coaching agents? They were different level type of questions, not tell me about yourself type of questions, But I did that interview. He was there, and it was like there were like 3 managers as well. So I remember that I went in very confidently because I knew I really wanted to get that position as a trainer. And so I went confidently, and they were sitting on a table, like 3 ladies, and he was there in the group. And the idea was that I had to do a demonstration. I had to demonstrate. I had 10 minutes to present a class, a call center topic, and they would ask me some questions. That was like part of the interview. So I remember that I went in, and the first thing that I did is I shook hands. Right? That's a sign of confidence. And then so I went to everybody and I said, hey, hi, my name's Emerson. Nice to meet you. Hey, nice to meet you too. Hey, nice to meet you too. Great, great. So I was shaking hands, showing them that I was confident. And they said, look, start your presentation. So I started my presentation. I think it was on something about empathy. I don't remember. So I did my empathy explanation and whatnot. And they said, great, perfect. They just asked me a couple of things. How do you feel about coaching people? What would you do if somebody in your training doesn't, is falling behind? How would you help this person if this person is not going with the team or not following what the team is doing? So they asked me those type of questions, and I think I answered them correctly and whatnot, or at least honestly. And they confirmed, like a week later, they confirmed me for the position. So it was a whole different kind of interview. And then the other third level interview was for a manager role. I applied for a manager role, and it was a whole different process, right? I had in that interview, I had to show them the full CV because they wanted to see university studies. They wanted to see if I had credentials. So it was a whole different, whole different requirements were different for the manager position. And I remember that interview was different. It was totally different. It was like You know, you already have a track record. We know who you are. And the questions were different. They were like, what's your leadership style? Would you consider yourself to be a leader or a boss? So they're asking me these type of, we call them more like managerial questions, something like that, because they needed somebody with a lot of experience. So they asked me all those type of questions, and I believed I did an awesome job answering what they needed. Eventually, like a week later, I received a letter, and I open it up, and it says, "Dear Emerson, thank you so much for participating in the round of interviews. Unfortunately, we have decided to choose another candidate. Thank you for participating, but continue to apply for future positions." That's the response that I got from that manager role, which I came so close to getting that one in that time. And I felt a little bit disappointed, but I said, you know, it was a great experience. I know what questions to expect the next time. I know how to better prepare myself for those type of questions, right? Because I never really had experience going through a managerial role type of interview, right? So that helped me a lot to grow professionally. That I sought out people like managers and senior managers, and I talked to them, and I said, you know, how was your interview process? Give me some tips. How did you get hired, or what type of questions did they ask you? So, you know, we had that opportunity, you know, but the time came, you know, I told you guys later on that I decided to start the academy and whatnot. So I left that behind, you know, but it was great. It was great. And I'm so happy that I joined the call center industry and that I had the opportunity to go through all those levels of interviews for all of those roles, that it gave me that experience, that knowledge of handling these type of interviews, that now in the present day, I use this experience to coach other professionals. That are aspiring to grow within their business, their companies, or to grow in different positions. Just as this week, I was helping a lady who works for NGOs. So she's in her second round of managerial interviews. So we're working on that. I'm also working very closely with an auditor who's applying for a different position within the company to become like a manager within the company. And the other experience that I've had was working with the regional logistics director of Guatemala for Colgate, who eventually was promoted to logistics director of Brazil, Sao Paulo. And that was a total success story. And she continues to work with me very closely because, like she says, my English is super important. But anyhow, I wouldn't have been able to help these people, and you know, all the other agents that come and they say, Mr. E, I want a better position. I want to be a manager. For example, at the beginning of the year, there was this kid, well, not this kid, this guy who had been an agent for over 8 years. And he said, Mr. E, I don't want to be an agent anymore. I want to be a trainer like you or something. So he enrolled. I gave him a lot of coaching. I prepared him for trainer interview questions, and he got the job. He got selected to become a trainer. So all these stories that I hear, like from people that I've been able to help, you know. So trust me, I lived it. I've experienced it, and it wasn't the money or the schedules. It was the person that I became. You know, it was the person that I became, that I transformed into a different kind of person. That I'm sure that if I stayed in my comfort zone of schools, working in the school system, we would not be having this conversation. I would have just kept on living in that comfort zone of schools all my life. But I decided to take a risk and get out of the school system to try in the BPO industry. So it was one of the best decisions that I made in my life. Okay. And that's why I'm here having this conversation with you. Well, anyhow, that's just my story on interviews. And in terms of the skills that we're talking about for a job interview, is very interesting because when I was thinking about how do I give some more context to the guys about skills, right? The thing that came to my mind, the first thing that came to my mind was a Bible story. Now, I am not a theologian. I haven't gone to seminar. I'm not an expert on the Bible, but I found it to be very related to the topic of skills. It's a story. It's an old story about a master and the three servants. A master who had three servants. In our modern time, let's imagine a businessman, and this businessman is going to go on a business trip, and he's going to leave three managers in charge, three employees, three of his best employees in charge of the business. So in this ancient story, this master, like this master person, called his best servants, his best. It was three servants that he called them up, and he said, in just very simply, he said, "Listen, I'm gonna go away, and I'm gonna leave some talents with you." A talent was a measure of gold, right? It was like a unit of gold, a talent. I'm gonna leave you guys a certain amount of gold or money, and I'd like for you to invest it. I'd like for you to do something with it while I'm away doing some other business somewhere else on this business trip. And when I come back, I want to check up on you and see how well you did with the talents that I gave you. Listen to the term, the talents. So what he did is he had his first servant. He gave his first servant 10 talents of gold. He gave 10 talents to one guy. To the other servant, he gave 2 talents of gold. And to the last servant, to the third servant, let's call him, he gave him 1 talent of gold. And he said, okay, there you go. I'm going to go off on my trip. I trust that you will use it wisely, that you will invest it. And when I come back, I expect to see some kind of profit with the gold that I gave. Well, turns out that he eventually came back, and he called his servants, and he asked them to report what they did during that time with the talents. Well, the first servant that received, what was it? I think I told you 10. Well, it was actually 5. My bad. He received 5 talents of gold. He said, Master, while you were away, I invested the gold. I put it to work. I put that money in some businesses, and I was able to make a return on the gold that you gave me. It was so good that I doubled the amount of gold that you initially gave me. So going back to the story, he originally gave him 5. My bad. So he doubled the 5 and gave back the master 10 talents of gold. His master, his boss, was super excited. He said he was super pleased, and he said, my dear servant, you did a wonderful job. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that you used your talents, your skills correctly, and that you were able to provide me with this profit. I want to celebrate with you, and I would like to invite you to a special dinner tonight to celebrate just an amazing job that you did, right? And that was the servant, the first servant. He called the other servant, which he gave 2 talents of gold, and the other servant, he asked him, so what did you do? And he said, Master, I did exactly the same thing as my friend here. I invested it, I put it to work, and eventually I was able to duplicate the profit. So I am also going to give you a profit. I'm going to give you the double of profit. So I'm going to give you double the portion of gold, which is he gave them 2 talents, so the master received 4 talents, right? So the master said, look, I'm very happy with you. You did a great job. I also want you to join us in the dinner that we're having in your honor to celebrate such a wonderful job that you did with the money that I trusted you with. Okay, great. Came time to ask the last servant. Well, calls him up and he says, yeah, what about you? What did you do with the 1 talent of gold that I gave you? And he said, Master, since I know that you are a very hard man and that you reap from the seed that you did not plant, what I did was that I was afraid. So what I did was I put the gold in a cloth and I buried it under the ground so nobody could steal it. And I left that gold there. And when I heard that you were coming back, I undug the gold, and here it is. I brought it back to you. It's all there. You can count it. Nothing happened to it. So I'm giving you back this, the one talent that you gave me. And the master said, so what you're telling me is that you did not follow my instructions. You are saying that I don't plant seed and that I harvest, that I don't deserve the harvest, and that you were scared to invest it, and you couldn't even put it in the bank, because in the bank at least I would have been able to collect some interest. Well, let's do something, he said. He told the other guys, the other servants, take that gold from this man and give it to the man that provided 10 talents of gold. And take this man out to the street where he deserves. I don't want to see him anymore in my presence. He said some other harsher things about him. But in the end, he said, the master says, everyone that uses his talents or his abilities will have more than what they need. And those who do not use their talent will lose it all, will have everything taken away from them, and they will eventually lose everything. So the story goes like this. If now let's bring it back to this era, that we all have skills, we all have abilities, different abilities. The problem is that sometimes we are afraid of using them because we are afraid of what people will say. We are insecure about ourselves. And just like the servant that hid it in the ground, we hide it in the ground and we don't use it. And if we don't use these skills, we're going to eventually lose them, right? So the idea is that when you approach these job interviews, is for you to talk about your skills, the abilities that you have confidently, and to demonstrate that you are able to do it. Because I'm certain that you will have amazing skills. All of you have great abilities and skills. So it's very important for you to use those skills and to talk about them in your job interview and not hide them away, right? Not be shy or scared to talk about them, but rather, take a risk and talk about them and confidently speak about them. So that's what I wanted to share with you as well, in terms of of talking about your skills. So I hope that gives you some other ideas. Okay. Well, anyhow, let's move on to an example